Hi, my name is Meghan Trefry, and this is my week 2 homework assignment. I chose to talk about my practicum instructor for my social work program when I was in college. I was working at a foster care agency, and I was a resource family service provider, which means I worked for the families who were taking in foster kids. So we met 3 days a week for a year for an 8-hour workday. We met in my practicum instructor, her name was Laura. We worked in her office, and due to very limited funding and supplies, we shared a desk, an office, a computer, everything, and she was happy to share that with me. It actually worked, I think, in our advantage. As far as our zone of connection, we were very close in proximity, and she shared everything with me. I started out just by shadowing her, so I watched her on phone calls, I listened to her as she dictated her emails, I went to her home visits with her, with existing clients, with new clients. I went to meetings with the school, meetings within the agency, group meetings, wherever she went, whatever she did, I went with her. Then we started working together, so it like a team effort. So we'd go on home visits, and I would talk to one of the kids, she would talk to the other, we would both talk to the parents, and we'd then check in with each other. And she'd start delegating out tasks to me, so I would be in charge of the note for one family, or I would be in charge of setting up the agenda for a meeting, but just really small tasks at first. Then she added on the tasks, and she was still very much there, and I would watch her and do a task, and then I'd have feedback. And then eventually, once I was able to do all of the tasks, she would watch me, and eventually I went to homes by myself, and I would check back in at the end of each day or each visit, and then I would go to homes by myself and write my progress notes, and instead of checking in each day or after each visit, she would read my note at the end of the day, or then she'd read my note at the end of the week. And we always had a meeting once a week to discuss anything that I needed to discuss, anything she noticed in the notes, and if I had any questions or if there was something that I was concerned with. For pacing, we started off slow until she thought I was competent and I felt competent, and then we picked up the pace. She had me watch for about the first 2 weeks, and like I said, I listened on all of her phone calls, helped her go through her emails. I drove with her to the home visits and I shadowed her. I listened to her dictate her reports and her progress notes and anything that she wrote. She, throughout the whole process, she would explain her thought process and the reasons behind her actions and behind what she was writing, and explain all of her decision-making process. So during this time, I just watched and I took notes, and I continued to read up on our policies and procedures. And then as she felt that I started to understand something, she'd introduce one thing at a time. So for the number of elements, it was one at a time. There were many steps, but we started with home visits and writing case notes. So after each home visit and each case note, I would check back in with her, and she would watch them, and then she would let me go by myself to the homes, and then I would check back in with her. And after taking on her easier clients, with families that I already watched her work with, she would start to transition the families to me until I started to have my own caseload. So I would gain new families depending on how many kids they had. One family I had for about a week, and then I'd get another family. Sometimes I'd get 2 families a week, but each was a family that she had already established and I had already visited with her. Till eventually I was starting with my own families. So the family would come in and go through the certification process, and then she'd pass them right to me, and they were my responsibility. And then eventually I would do the certification process. So I started from the entrance of foster care to that first initial interest, all the way through to getting a child placed in their home and then working with them with that child in their home. And eventually after that, I started doing classes for interested parents, so I had the whole spectrum, but everything was introduced to me bit by bit, and each thing she did, she scaffolded so that I watched, and I was never just thrown into the deep end. Everything that she gave me, even though I might have been nervous, she knew that I could handle it, and I knew that I could handle it because she had did everything in such an organized way. As for limitations, some of the limitations that could have distracted us or taken up too much of our time, things like personal bias or emotions related to families that we were helping. And I learned from her that it was important to acknowledge those emotions and those thoughts in order to have good working and trusting relationships with our families. And as in terms of what my limitations were in the master-apprentice relationship, like I said, I started watching and then shared families with my instructor, and she delegated tasks, and then she gave me families to work with, and we talked about what I liked, what I didn't like, what I felt comfortable with, and she helped coach me through things that I was uncomfortable with and constantly reviewed my notes and cases with me so that I would always feel that I was ready to be independent before she gave me anything that was too much. And if it was, we talked about it and we would role play and work through the situation. For spotlighting my objective, I think I often did that through writing progress notes after each visit. It helped me to reflect on my objectives with the family. And by connecting with my instructor each week, she was able to provide a lot of verbal praise and continued giving me more independence, which showed me that she was happy with my progress.